Hello, hello. Welcome to the new episode of Take It EV. I have no idea what number it is because we're recording at Everything Electric North and I'm doing multiple shows. With me I have Kevin, KC Talks, YouTuber. If you have never seen his videos, the link's going to be in the description, and we're just going to be talking about EVs, efficiency, making YouTube videos, whatever comes to our mind, right? So Kevin, introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what we're going to be talking about today.
Excellent. So I'm KC Talks EVs. So I'm a YouTuber based up in the north of England, and I do quite a lot of electric vehicle reviews. I also do a Live in It sort of series. So I've got a Mark 1 MG ZS EV. So that's the original one that came out in 2019. And essentially, I've been living with it for the last 67,000 miles. I also show all of the warts and all of EV ownership, but overall, absolutely a positive experience.
And you're also like a no-nonsense guy who knows about energy and science, and you do your stats, and it's all, there's no nonsense basically. It's all facts. Yeah,
I try not. The thing that I always try and always do is I always give out quite a lot of the factual information. I've always said that my most boring videos have always been the most popular. When I mean the most boring ones is sometimes when I watch them back and I go, I can't publish this. This, one of them was how I use my ZS EV for a whole week, and it was in 2021. And this was basically me showing my work commute as well as what I do on the weekend. I was just sort of thinking to myself, there is no way I can possibly show that and get people to watch this. However, actually, after a good few thousand views, what I discovered was people want to see the day-to-day use of them.
Yeah, they wanted to see the real life, experience rather than just a polished out 5-minute review when somebody was given the car for 30 minutes. And
exactly, I mean, when I look back to what I actually got me into EVs in the first place, I mean, the 2 or the 3 main YouTubers that I was watching was a guy in Scotland who had a Renault Zoe. I think his name was Aloam, I think, on YouTube.
Yeah, he's a priest, I think.
Yes.
I know the guy, yeah. I watched his videos as well.
Yeah, and I used to binge watch them all the time. I remember him going from Aberdeen down to London and back in his 22 kilowatt hour Renault Zoe.
What a man.
I know, tell me about it. And I also used to watch a person who had a Nissan Leaf. So that was Ian Sampson, and I know that he does a lot about solar at the moment and all of that. So those people actually got me into it because it demonstrated the day-to-day life of running one. And essentially with my YouTube channel, on top of obviously all the electric vehicle reviews, that's really what I want to show the world, really. And I think it's really important given the amount of, I don't want to say misinformation because I think it's a bit of a buzzword, but there is a lot of information that's borderline lying, possibly, a bit further from the truth than it needs to be. Yeah. And I think people do need to be shown that in reality, I get home, I plug in, I wake up in the morning, assuming I did actually plug in, and it will be fully charged. So essentially, I want to show that.
Yeah, I think the promise of the social media was that we're going to see people's actual experiences. Instead of that, we're getting loads of doom and gloom and algorithm-driven nonsense. But that's just the way humans are, I think, the human nature. So, was the MG ZS EV your first EV?
Yes. So this was in 2019. The kind of story goes really was I wasn't actually intentionally buying a ZS EV. The story kind of went that at the time I was looking for another car. At the time, I actually still had my first car, essentially, which was somewhat old Hyundai i20. So, small super mini, cheap to insure. Did about 55,000 miles in it. Back a few years ago, I used to be a support worker, so I used to drive quite a lot and all of that sort of thing. And I was looking for a new car, essentially, because I quite liked it, but I wanted something a little bit bigger. My target was as something that can put a washing machine in the back of it would be quite a nice option, and bikes and things like that. So I was actually looking at the Hyundai Ioniq. So that was the fully electric one, the classic Ioniq, I think is what people call it. And I remember seeing one. They were really, really rare. You could not get one on the used market. So in the end,
too good for their own good, basically.
Exactly. I mean, I think they imported about 2 in the whole country, as far as I'm aware, because I genuinely couldn't find one. I found one, and it was it was. I don't want to say reasonably priced because I don't think it was, but it was definitely on my budget sort of end. And I remember going there and I had an absolutely horrid experience with the dealer. I booked it 2 weeks in advance, and I remember going there. I was with a friend as well, and I remember going there, and essentially they wouldn't let me test drive the car. And I booked it 2 weeks in advance, and I asked them, because I was, 21, 22 at the time, so I was a bit on the young side, but hey, I was upfront about it, had my license with me, and they said, well, we're not going to let you test drive it, and we're very busy because we've got a 0% finance offer on. And I went, that's exactly what I was going to take up, so that shouldn't be a problem. Anyway, he begrudgingly allowed me to drive the car. He knew absolutely nothing about it, literally not a word. I asked him, well, what's the NEDC or WLTP range of it? Nothing. What's the trim level? Nothing. Was it like, what's your opinion on the car? Nothing, absolutely nothing at all. Came out of it and went, I'm not buying a car from this place ever. I'm not going to mention the dealer name, but it was one in Nottingham, so you can probably guess from that one. Now, a couple of weeks later, something amazing came out. It was an advert for MG. Now, my dad had an old MG ZS, probably one of the last ones in production. And all I can remember is it was absolutely horrid. I remember very vividly that on my secondary school prom night, he was supposed to be taking me there. Would not start. The air conditioning never worked at all. This was probably one of the last of the British MG Rovers. But I saw an advert for a ZS, and it was the SUV. And they said, here's what we're selling it. We'll give you, obviously you get 3,500 government grant. We'll give you another 3,500 and we'll throw in a home charger on top of that. And I went, sold. So I went to the nearest MG dealer, which is Maple Garage up in Sprotely, and the dealership experience was completely different.
I can tell you what my experience with MG dealership was in, I think, Maidstone or somewhere like that. I booked a test drive. We arrived on the day, and the dealer was like, we don't have you in the books, and by the way, we have somebody else booked in at the moment, so bugger off. And the car, we sat there in the car for about 10 minutes, and the car was plugged in. Nobody was test driving it. We went across the road to see Vauxhall Astra, or whatever it was, the new E, whatever, the one that you just recently reviewed.
Oh, the Astra Electric.
Yeah. Because they didn't have it yet, but I knew that it's coming, so I just wanted to see what it's going to look like. We came back 20 minutes later, that car was still there, plugged in. And I was like, well, we're not going to be test driving MG ever from this dealer because,
the thing is, the dealership experience is such an important thing. And I think, I honestly, at this point in time, genuinely believe that a couple dealerships around the country kind of take that for granted. I think at the end of the day, they are still trying to sell you something. So they should try and sell you the product that you have, and it's not a case of, well, someone's already researched it, therefore I don't have to do anything. Well, no, actually, I would argue that there are still definitely some people around who need that sort of level of, well, you should probably try and sell me this thing that I've come down to have a look at. But just going back into it, I had a dealership experience which was excellent with my MG experience. I mean, honestly, they just went, here's the keys. Come back in a couple hours and let me know what you think. And I went, I've signed on the dotted line. I'll pay for my deposit. I think I was about 300 in the queue, I think it was. December 2019, picked up my dynamic red ZS EV. They even persuaded me to spend even more money going for the top spec package, so they must have done something right. But yes, as I mentioned, dealership experience really matters, and that's probably the reason why I'm in a ZS EV right now. Amazing.
I love the color on them. The red packages, or the red color of the. There's a bit of a noise outside. I don't know. So we are recording at Everything Electric show North in a back room, so apologies about the other background noises. The color on them, they got really spot on. That's one thing that I loved about it. Obviously, at the time I had a completely different car. I was looking at a couple of options myself. I was looking at VW or e-Niro, and we put deposit on both of them. And I basically said to my wife, whichever one arrives first, we're going to get. And e-Niro was basically like 2 weeks before i3, so that one. And that's slightly more expensive than MG's ZS EV, but the car blew me away on the test drive because it has like 200 brake horsepower. It's absolutely, amazing. And it's a Kia. Kia's doing really good thing these days. So, I was sold on. But otherwise, I'll probably, if the dealership didn't do what they did, I'll probably be thinking about ZS EV or other MGs at the time. There's a guy driving a thing just outside the door, and it really irritates me. But we're going to continue. We're not going to stop recording.
We never stop.
We never stop. So what made you decide to actually start recording YouTube videos? Let's talk about that.
To be quite honest, I can't actually tell you the answer to that question, honestly. I've always wanted to... The first thing that I've always wanted to do was inform, and I liken everything to probably one of my favourite YouTubers, which is completely different topic, but explaining computers. For the last 12 years, I've been watching it, and if I'm quite honest, he does a lot of videos that I already probably know how it works, right? But the way that he's done it in such a way is he's done it in a very simple way. He's explained things in a very, very easy manner. He's explained things while probably having a little bit of a joke about things as well. And I watched that sort of thing and I went, that's something that I've always wanted to do. In my profession, I also educate a lot of people, and the fact is that you've now got to think, well, can I expand that to electric vehicles and electrification? I was a bit of a weird one when I was a kid. I didn't have, for example, a nice Lamborghini or a Ferrari on the wall. I had a a Tesla Model S in red, which is something that I still aspire to have. Maybe not so much now with all the new cars on the market, but that was something which I've always wanted. I've always liked the idea of educating people on the basis of what's out there, but also to kind of have an end goal. And I think that end goal needs to be, we need to have effectively either we produce less CO2 in the atmosphere, and we need to get it to the point where actually it's not a net approach, and then possibly have a carbon negative approach. I've been formulating this thing over the last few weeks, and what I've kind of discovered is that the reason why people don't really talk about electric vehicles, or they think they're the work of the devil or whatever, is not necessarily because of the media, but rather actually when you talk about carbon emissions, you will never see it. It's a gas, it's a completely colourless gas.
And if you increase the concentration of it in the atmosphere, you don't see the effect of it with a naked eye either.
You will never see it. However, when you then see, for example, the extremes of temperature and things like that, and people go, oh, that's climate change, they think it's a complete farce. They think it's a lie. And that's because they don't see the immediate effects of it. One really good example on this, I think, is, for example, smoking tobacco. Because that one, you can actually see the smoke that comes off a cigarette. And then you can have a look at all of the studies that demonstrate, for example, the increase in the prevalence of lung cancer.
Or you just walk into a smoker's house and
Absolutely.
you notice the walls are yellow.
Yeah, walls are yellow, for example. Good luck trying to clean that off, right? Yeah. And that's happening inside your lungs. That is an obvious, visible effect. Whereas in the case of exhaust emissions, it is not a obvious, immediately seeable effect. And I think that's the reason why people don't care as much about it.
Interesting. And
in reality, it's still as much of an effect that we need to care about. I was watching, what was it? Sorry for any people who hate Jeremy Clarkson, but I was watching season 3 of Clarkson's Farm. And I saw his struggle because of the extreme weather patterns that were not happening at a particular time. And that is going to get worse because of the extremes of temperature and the extremes of carbon dioxide that we are putting into the atmosphere. And yes, sure, it's gone from, I think, about 240 parts per million in pre-industrial age up until about 400 and something that we are now. That is not, we're talking about parts per million here, but that will make a huge difference. But because people don't see it, people don't care about it. And I think that is where the cultural war really is happening. I don't think it's, if it was a lot more visible, if CO2 was a blue gas that filtered out our entire view of the world, then yes. But
maybe somebody should do, because I remember at school when we were working, looking at gases, there was a beak with, I think that's the word, right? The cylindrical.
Oh, beaker, yeah.
Beaker. Sorry, that's the word. Yeah, not beak. Or two beaks beakers on the weight on the scale. Sorry, and one of them was. They put invisible thing into it, and it just went down because I think CO2 is actually heavier than the air.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to actually fill it up? I'm just thinking of on top of my head as an engineer. Fill a long tube with CO2 and film it with a infrared camera, just to show as you're pouring the CO2 how that changes everything and measure the temperature of it. Would that be possible?
Oh, absolutely. There's one practical.
Basically, I'm trying to say visualize it for the people to see.
I think, it's actually quite interesting you say that, because you don't even need to use a infrared camera of that. What you would do is literally fill, for example, a glass ball with CO2, or alternatively fill it with a difference in, I don't know whether you'll make a huge difference on, a micro scale with 200 versus 400 ppm, but if you did that, for example, and then shined a standard desk lamp on it, you would effectively have a much greater temperature change in the one with a higher CO2 content than the one with a lower CO2 or no CO2 content. That is something that we can do. That's something I actually do to demonstrate the effects of CO2. But I think what I mean by that is because at the end of the day, people turn on their cars. People don't need to necessarily care about the emissions from a typical combustion engine car. But really, what we should do is the people that should care and the people that should be, moving our way towards it should be saying, well, this is something you cannot see with the naked eye. We still need to care about it, because in 50 to 100 years' time, when that CO2 concentration goes too high, we are going to see even more extreme weather changes. We are going to see, for example, sea levels rising because of it. And I do love it when people go, in terms of science, well, there's such a huge difference. That means it must not be true. And you're sort of thinking, no, it's just the fact is that when we do studies, we get different results each time. But it's somewhere in between there, and it's still not very good for the person. One of them said, at minimum, it's 7 meters rise. I'm thinking, but according to my altimeter, which may not be that accurate, holds 2 or 3 meters above sea level.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to start living on my first floor, and that is not good. So, but yeah, going back to it, I mean, I did this to primarily inform. It might be the most boring videos anyone else watches, but you know what? I've still done what I wanted to do.
I think they're very informative. So I watch your videos, and I know lots of people do as well. So, I've introduced to a couple of people on the show here, and some people were saying, "Oh yeah, I've seen your videos." So
thank you very much. Interestingly enough, actually, the person that I was meeting, I completely forgot his name. I'll be honest, but I know that he's doing something with his VWE up, and he's traveling to all European cities on it. So
I've already recorded an episode with him. So
perfect. Well, in that case, then I'm going to be definitely watching all of his videos, because that is again demonstrating that even though it is a city car with 36 kilowatt-hour battery pack, it will be able to, you can travel Europe with it. So.
Yeah, he's a very passionate man, and I admire his passion, not passionatedness, passion. That's the word, Greg.
So yeah,
good stuff. So you're a science man. We were talking about pre-show, like the efficiency. I think that's a great subject. Since you know physics and stuff, explain to people, what do you think about efficiency? What do you think the improvements can be made? What do you think is going to happen? And is physics going to help us or not?
So basically, I should probably mention pre-show, Greg and I discussed what they were actually talking about on the Gigatheatre, which is talking about efficiency, I believe. It was something to do with what's going to be the next trend for electric vehicles. To give a bit of background, I have tested quite a few electric vehicles, and interestingly enough, on my range test, which I always get a bit worried whether people are going to say it's realistic. However, people say it is very realistic. What isn't realistic is doing a constant 75 mile an hour motorway run in the UK. That is not realistic. So therefore, please don't do it.
That seldom happens that you can just drive for extended amount of time at constant speed.
Exactly. On all my range tests, at the end of the day, I have hit some form of average speed check, but it's the nature of living in the UK where there will be an average speed check at some point in time on a UK motorway. So it's actually more representative by putting that in and trying to maintain 70 miles an hour as best I can. But going back to efficiency, I think it's extremely important that manufacturers start to actually increase their efficiency rather than increase battery sizes. Obviously, battery size is extremely important. I think, especially given the fact that, I can't remember the exact statistic nowadays, it's either 2/3 or 1/3 of households don't have off-street parking. I can't remember it's one of those, because every time I look, it's probably some different statistic anyway.
In the UK, it's probably 1/3.
Is it 1/3 without off-street parking?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that's better then, because I wasn't sure if it was 2/3 with or 2/3 without.
I think it's fewer people. Most people live, or not vast majority, but like, not small majority
have off-street parking.
Yeah.
And as a result, those 1/3 of people who have, for example, an internal combustion engine vehicle, they need the range of, in my honest opinion, to get them to be in a position where they are not going to worry. They do need somewhere around 400 or 500 miles. Do they actually need it? No, absolutely not. It's basically carrying around dead weight, if so. But if it gives them peace of mind and moves them to electrification, I'm all for it. And with the education that a lot of people are doing, so for example, what Fully Charged are doing, Fair Charge UK are doing, for example, with their EV Myths book, which I have got and is an excellent resource, that will change in time. But for now, it's not going to happen. We're going to need those vehicles with 300, 400, 500 miles of EV range to keep people satisfied. So that means they don't have to change any part of their life apart from literally plug in at some place that they visit. But with that sort of range, it's just like the equivalent range of a petrol and diesel car. The thing is, though, is that there are two routes that you can do. There's either you shove as much battery as you humanly possibly can, and we are looking at that, especially in the States. I looked at the Chevrolet Silverado pickup truck. It's got a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack in it. So
it's crazy, isn't it?
I mean, I don't even. That's 4 or 5 times greater than what I've got in my car.
I think the only reason they put that in that car is because it can tow like 2.5 tons or something crazy, and they want to still have to have the range with towing capability. That's my guessing. I think it's a pretty reasonable estimation, a pretty reasonable, guess on that one. I mean, that's what I would have thought as well. But the downside is if you put a battery pack that large in it without anything discussing any form of efficiency, I think most people are getting about 1.4 or 2 miles per kilowatt hour, which, yeah, sure, on a 200 kilowatt hour pack, you're looking at 400 miles or 300 miles. But if you could increase that efficiency up to maybe 2 or 3, I mean, that would take it up to nearly, 600 miles or 500 miles range.
Somebody's
going to hyper mile that car.
Someone is. Hopefully not, trailering, 5 tons in the back of it. That'll be a good idea. But I think at the moment, and after, I think it echoes the bit that the Fully Charged Gigatheatre actually had. I think we are going to see a lot more manufacturers focus on efficiency. One of the vehicles I just recently tested was the Vauxhall Astra Electric. Now that, when I looked at it and it had a WLTP combined of 258 miles, I went, that's no way. No. No, they're having a laugh. They are completely lying on that one when I first of all looked at it, because that would be a WLTP of 4.9 miles per kilowatt hour. I think I did the maths on it. And I went, there's no way. Absolutely no way it's going to achieve anywhere near that, because I heard not horror stories, but, what happens with a Corsa E or the previous generation when it gets cold. A 45 kilowatt hour pack maybe gets 110 miles. It turns out I was completely wrong. After 3 or 4 days of test driving it, I drove, I think, 380 miles in it. So I do give it a good run, including the range test. It got an average of 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour. And that was me not really paying that much attention to it, driving as I normally would do. On the range test, it did 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour, average speed of 60 miles an hour. And on an eco run, a genuine eco run, I got 5.3 miles per kilowatt hour.
That is amazing. I mean, I probably would have gotten about 3.5 out of that car.
It did feel, this is something I completely forgot to mention in the impressions video. It did feel slightly, not gutless, but I think they've dulled the throttle response a little bit compared to my ZS EV, where basically it will spin its tyres all day long if you really wanted it to. The Astra, I couldn't get it to spin its tyres, which was, and it's on Michelin E-Primacy once, so, on an eco tyre. So, but I do think by far that we need to focus on actually probably going back to hatchbacks.
Yeah, smaller cars turns out are more efficient.
Yeah, wow. You know, if we're going to go back to physics, you know, I mean, on the basis of mass alone, but also aerodynamics. I'm not an aerodynamicist, but at the end of the day, more streamlined designs, which you can get better with hatchback designs compared to, for example, SUVs. That reduces things like frontal area. The other thing as well is, as they mentioned, was motor efficiencies. You know, they were saying about the difference between a permanent motor and I think it was an electromagnetic motor, I think is what they were saying. Those two things are going, you know, and we are going to see efficiency improvements with it. Obviously, I think Ewan Matuk's excellent sort of analysis on that discussed things like using rare earth materials and things like that, which obviously has somewhat of an ethical aspect of it, and I completely agree with that. But overall, you know, that's really what I think personally what's going to make it. It completely decimated all of the other vehicles I've ever had on test. The closest one actually was the MG4 long range, and that was at 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour.
That's a big difference.
That's a huge difference, and I don't understand how they've done it, if I'm honest. I did also mention in the video, it is a sweet spot. If you do have access to a charger, doesn't have to be home charging, could be workplace charging, or, you know, you go to certain places, you know, every week or so. 50 to 75 kilowatt hours, I personally think would be pretty good. You know, it would give you, with that sort of level of efficiency, you know, somewhere in the region of 200 miles, 300 mile range. It gives you also the ability to save a bit of money on, at the moment, in my opinion, quite expensive rapid charging. And overall, you know, that's really what we should be looking at. You know, if we want people to move to electric vehicles and have electrified vehicles, we need 400 or 500 miles of range to keep them satisfied.
It's a good point. Let's take a quick break. Right. We're going to have to wrap this up because apparently we're getting kicked out of the venue.
Yes, Gary C. from EV Musings podcast, I think just came in saying that they've locked the whole place up. So hopefully I don't have to stay here overnight.
No, well, we're not going to be camping and podcasting here forever. So, Kevin, you've got obviously YouTube channel. What's happening, you know, in the future? Can you tell us what other cars you're going to review? Like, what is your outlook?
So in terms of actual vehicle reviews at the moment, I haven't actually got anything sort of confirmed, or I haven't actually filmed anything with that. There's been a few definite vehicles on the list that a lot of my viewers have recommended that I definitely go have a look at. That is actually probably where I get most of my sort of content ideas from. And it's all from the viewers. One person yesterday suggested, and I think rightfully so, there's not a lot of videos on EV towing. So I think I might have to go on a caravanning holiday at some point.
Especially in the UK.
Absolutely, yeah. And I do want to I've never been caravanning before, so I think at some point, and I've never towed, so this could be a very interesting video. Hopefully I don't crash like a caravan or something. That'll be a very...
KC learns towing, or, you know...
KC's driving school, you know. So yeah, that is, you know, so that is definitely on the agenda of that one. In terms of events that I'm going to, the next one after this will probably be the British Motor Show. I haven't had my tickets come through yet, so I do need to clarify what's going on with that one, but hopefully, fingers crossed, I will be there. And finally, and this is a big plug for the Yorkshire EV Club, which I am one of the admin team on the Yorkshire EV Club. Thank you, Paul Carnell, and everyone at the Yorkshire EV Club. We've got a huge event that always goes on every year. We kind of hijack the Rotherham show. And we want to showcase as many vehicles as possible. And the reason why is because we want to show the public, here are all the selection. And it's not, you know, as a lot of news articles probably say, it's not just the Nissan Leaf and the Renault Zoe anymore. Every single manufacturer now has pretty much an electric vehicle in their lineup. And that's what we want to showcase. I always tend to bring a car down to kill two birds with one stone, you know, test it as well as, you know, showcase it at the event. So please come on down. Definitely sign up to join the Yorkshire EV Club. We have reached 2,000 members, so that's quite exciting. And yeah, you know where I am. So obviously on KC Talks EV on the YouTube channel. I try and avoid as much arguing as I did on my Facebook page, but someone has to do it, I guess. So I do kind of start baiting people on some of the questionable news outlets. on their ideals of electrification, etc. So you'll see me on there.
And I drive to Yorkshire meetups or Yorkshire EV meetups from Kent, which is about a 5-hour drive every so often, because you guys are just so lovely and so welcoming. And it's and it's usually in a beautiful venue somewhere, or area where I can actually go for a walk. And it's just if obviously this is useless to people living outside of the UK, but if you're in the UK, I think it's worth having, just showing up for a couple of hours if you're in the area, or if you want to plan a nice weekend around it.
And even though I know that obviously you are listening to the Take It EV podcast, I would highly recommend that you listen to it. I pretty much listen to it every time it gets released on the way to work. So
Good stuff.
So yeah, nice shameless plug there, I think. But yes, thank you so much, obviously, for allowing me to have a chat about my YouTube channel and my ideals, I guess.
Good stuff. I hope we can talk about stuff in the future if you have anything else interesting, because I'm sure there's other things we can talk about, especially when it comes to science.
Absolutely.
I always like to have people of scientific mind on the podcast. So thank you, Kevin. And I'll leave all your details and the EV Yorkshire Club in the details. And thank you for listening.
No worries at all. Thank you so much.